If you're just tuning in, welcome everybody. This is Pueblo Action Alliance with us. I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves and introduce the workshop as well. This is part of the 2020 Uplift Digital Convergence organized by our young fellows here in Uplift, which is an anti-colonial, anti-capitalist project here in the Four Corners, Greater Southwest region. We're so excited and blessed to have you all here with us. I'll let you all go ahead and take it from here, Pueblo Action Alliance.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. Julia here, Julia Bernal. I'm from Sandia Pueblo, which is one of the smaller Pueblo nations in New Mexico, just north here of Albuquerque. I am the Environmental Justice Director of Pueblo Action Alliance. I've been organizing with the Alliance organization since 2016. So, you know, we've just been in this really beautiful time of growth and experience and kinship. And so, you know, we're just really excited to be here today, and I'll go ahead and pass it to our newest staff member, Marcus.
Well, thank you, Julia. Guati se hopa, tawashi dash kohenlome got taya shots on the koya washitsa, zimunusta, koe kume aurukek so. My name is Marcus. My pronouns are he, him, his. And yeah, I work as a communications designer with the Pueblo Action Alliance. And yeah, I'm like fairly new. I'm like 2 months in with the PAA folks, and it's been really awesome. Sheldon, Reyes, they're here with us today as well. But yeah, I'm excited. Thank you, Uplift, for allowing us to give this presentation on community defense. It's so good to see everybody here. For those I haven't met, Alicia, what's up? I know you. So yeah, do we want to get into the presentation, Julia?
Sure, yeah, just a quick little shout out to Sheldon and Reyes, and also Alicia, congratulations on your fellowship. We're just always happy to uplift your spirit in any way possible. But yeah, so we could get into it. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And the formation of this presentation is mostly going to be like lecture based, but hopefully at the time, towards the end of the presentation, we can create some spaces for dialogue. So let me get into this. In present mode. All right, cool. So we already did our introductions. We will be giving a presentation on Indigenous Community Defense. This has been something that we have been really working hard on as an organization. And I'll go ahead and let Marcus share a little bit more about what we do at Pueblo Action Alliance. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started.
Cool, sounds good. So we as Pueblo Action Alliance, we're a community-driven organization that promotes cultural sustainability and community defense by addressing environmental and social impacts within Indigenous communities. And so here on your right side of the screen, we have listed out kind of some of our core traditional values. And even though that we come from different communities with different languages, different creation stories, you know, these cores kind of unite us. They kind of unify all Pueblo people, and it allows us to create, you know, a space that is Pueblo-centric, that is traditional centered. And within these core values, I just want to read these off to everybody. And so our first one is respect. Number 2, consent. Number 3, protection of sacred entities. Number 4, cultural sustainability. Number 5, community defense. 6, indigenous self-determination and sovereignty. And 7, traditional and popular education. And if we can go to the next slide. And so here we have our 10 points of unity. And so these 10 points are a tool to accomplish long-term goals that we have. And these long-term goals are basically, we hold the vision of unifying and mobilizing our Pueblo communities. And our organizing strategies and tactics are shaped by these points of unity that encompass and value and the values that we as Pueblo people hold and protect ever since the first European step here on our ancestral lands. And yeah, and so those who were actually working on building a membership board, and so those who align with these points of unity are qualify for our membership. And so our 10 points of unity is to 1, to fight and protect the birthright as Pueblo Indigenous people. 2, to heal from cycles of depression and oppression, or from trauma and oppression, to heal the land and waters. 3, to create intergenerational spaces to learn and grow. 4, to preserve Indigenous languages, traditional teachings, and oral his and her stories. 5, to dismantle and eradicate oppressive systems and European occupations that have killed, harmed, and assimilated Indigenous peoples. 6, to build international solidarity with Indigenous peoples' global struggle. 7, to mobilize a united Pueblo front. 8, to obtain land and water back. 9, to embrace intersectional identities by erasing the Eurocentric disease that has occupied the Indigenous spirit, mind, and body. And 10 is to restore balance of power among people of all genders. And so, yeah, next slide. Yeah, and so within our points of unity and our core values come our actions, and community actions are our ways of organizing, kind of the methods that we organize by. And so starting with our ceremonial action, this includes the practicing of prayer and traditional ways of life, kind of taking part in our traditional ceremonies, encouraging youth, encouraging our communities throughout all of our pueblos to continue with that way, with our ancestral ways of living. And then our civil action to the right-hand side. This is person-to-person organizing. This is, being organized within tribal meetings, being organized within tribal governments, even in an urban setting, contacting other Indigenous organizations and having types of meetings to build coalitions, to build kind of solidarity as well with not only Indigenous and Pueblo, but also with our other communities, our Black and Chicanx communities that build organizations as well. And then our direct action, which is below, is confronting colonial powers. And so confronting these powers come with the demands that come from within the community. And we don't promote nonviolent direct action. And so the imagery here is kind of a symbolism a little bit of what like vocalizing a little bit as together, but it kind of gets a little bit more broader. So Julia, go ahead, next slide. So here's a little bit of what we've been up to. We like to share a couple pictures and events that we've kind of engaged in the past couple months. So here we have kind of like a overview of things that we've done. And so in the top left corner, we kind of have like peace of mind, cultivated expressions, which is actually coming up soon. And that aligns with also our kind of our youth intern, the things that we've been doing with our youth interns. And so they kind of are hosting events right now. The Talks with Grandma and Grandpa, which is the flyer in the right-hand corner, had taken place yesterday actually, and that is actually available for viewing on our website. And so, yeah, that's actually in the youth internship tab. And so a lot of these also incorporate Chaco Will Never Be Ruins. This is kind of highlighting the work that we're doing with protecting Greater Chaco, with the environmental, the climate that we're facing right now as Pueblo people. On the top left, next to the peace of mind, we had given a couple of resilience workshops Reyes had hosted earlier on. We have two pictures of our youth interns right here, Jalen Little Bear and then Trenton DeVore. We're doing great work through that. And then we have kind of our solidarity picture here with Black Lives Matter on Tiwa territory. And then on the bottom right-hand side is a recent diagram. It's an infographic of the health effects that fracking does to our body, kind of in line with the Chaco work that we've been doing. And so a lot of this with the infographic, it kind of speaks more to the mutual aid work that we've been kind of really, engaging in community and trying to pursue a little bit more diligently. In the next slide, Julia. Cool. And so over here, we have, our various mutual aid efforts. Pueblo Action Alliance kind of turned, our mutual aid has become kind of more central since COVID has happened. And so in these images, we have some of the mutual aid events that we've kind of hosted, allowing and giving PPE to the community, to our unsheltered relatives and to those who are unable to access things like masks, hand sanitizer. Along with that, we also gave out, just some food and water for the community, those who don't have access to that either. And so in these images up here, on the bottom left, the three pictures are kind of some of the PAA moms contributing work. These are our mask warriors donating masks that contributed to this mutual aid work. And a lot of it couldn't have happened without the support and the help that came from within the families of our staff. And so pictures, the center picture is also a mask giveaway that we had done in Albuquerque last month. And then we also had another mask giveaway that was in Espanola at one of the parks there. And so really just reaching out to the community, trying to help, everybody, that everyone's covered. And we're going to get into the importance of mutual aid here in a little bit, but this is just a little bit of what we've been doing here. Julie, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Sorry, I was on mute. Just that, we weren't prepared for any sort of mutual aid. We didn't have any sort of infrastructure in the organization. We didn't really have the capacity, but within our mission and our whole vision and core of our organization is to help our Indigenous communities. And so there wasn't a question of whether or not we were going to do mutual aid work. It was yes, we're here to offer our hands, to help out with this work. And so, we're really grateful for other organizations like Seeding Sovereignty, who has partnered with us on our community care Indigenous Impact Initiative. We've been working with some of the other local communities like the Red Nation and the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women and, Tewa Women United and the Three Sisters Collective. So there was a lot for us to learn from while organizing these mutual aid efforts. And that sort of experience, learning curve, reflection really did push us into wanting to organize under community defense, and even to the point where we changed our mission statement to include community defense. And so we wanted to dig a little bit deeper on what Indigenous community defense looks like. And so in the midst of COVID, we had seen a lot of Indigenous communities exercising their sovereignty to protect not just the land, but the people, the traditional knowledge that's kept, in our communities. You saw many different sovereign Indigenous nations all over Turtle Island exercise that sovereignty to protect their communities. And so by definition, what we feel like Indigenous community defense is that autonomy and sovereignty to self-organize our communities, to defend, to educate us on what the crisis is doing, and to care, you know, for ourselves, for the land, for the water, because we have so much to protect in terms of cultural preservation and traditional ecological knowledge. And that protection has been fueled by the indigenous resistance against colonization. So it all links back, you know, to the very root of what the colonial power brought with them, you know, when they started to colonize our land bases. And so, you know, we decided, you know, that we were going to really dive into other examples of indigenous community defense. For one of first being the Zapatistas movement in Chiapas, Mexico. You know, their motto of everything for the people and nothing for me speaks to like community, speaks to bottom-up organizing, speaks to any means, by any means possible, we will do what we have to do in order for us to protect our ways of life, our cultural integrity, our land bases, and all of the cultural resources that sit on that land base. We then looked more into the Purépeché mountain community in the Chiran, Michoacan territory. This is another example of an indigenous self-organized community defense model. Because the Purépeché people were experiencing settler violence, they were experiencing the exploitation of their forests by the federal government aiding illegal logging. And so, you know, they adopted they reclaimed their traditional self-governance and societal structures to organize another successful model of what indigenous community defense looks like. They've based a lot of their organizing on their demands of safety, justice, and the reforestation of their territory. This all very aligns with indigenous core values throughout the whole global indigenous struggle. So these are examples of how indigenous communities have organized themselves on core values, on indigenous core values, which is something that we have been learning ourselves in building what community defense looks like for Pueblo people. When it came to mutual aid, we looked at what the Aboriginal relatives were doing in Australia, demanding that there be defense against any outsiders coming into their communities because of the intent to protect their elders and their languages and their youth. Same thing that's happening here in New Mexico. We have been shutting down our borders, our reservation borders to outsiders to protect our elders, our youth, our languages, and our land bases. So we're seeing a lot of similarities when it comes to indigenous community defense. We've been working somewhat closely. We've been building relationships. Reyes went down to Brazil, what was it, 2 years ago, I believe, and she spent time with the Guarani Kiowa people, peoples in the Amazon, the indigenous peoples there. What they have been doing is, again, self-organizing, protecting their territories by blockading, because much again like here in the US, indigenous peoples, when COVID hit, did not receive any sort of support from their federal or national government systems. It literally had to come from the community. And that's why it's important for us to use these examples to learn from, so that way we can prepare and we can, you know, organize around readiness, you know, if and when crisis hits our communities. And, you know, we think it's valuable and important for us to look at examples of resistance, indigenous resistance in the framework of community defense. And one of the most important examples to us is the Pueblo Revolt. The Pueblo Revolt was a Pueblo indigenous act of resistance against the colonial power. it took 10 years for Pueblo people to organize this revolt against Spanish conquest. A lot of factors were involved in the organizing of this. You know, it was to protect the people. It was to reclaim land and water. It was to, you know, continue our lifeways, whether that's dancing or singing or other types of ceremonies that was viewed as pagan or evil or savage even, you know. And so as Pueblo Action Alliance, in our vision of mobilizing and unifying Pueblo people, we must remember that we are the descendants of Pueblo revolutionaries. We are the descendants of Indigenous Pueblo people organizing themselves to confront a colonial power. And they did this through education. They did this through their traditional core values. They did this through spiritual readiness as well. And so, you know, we are grateful that we have these examples of Indigenous community defense, so that way we can now start to think about what the formation of Indigenous Pueblo community defense looks like here in New Mexico. Pueblo people have a long history of protecting, fighting, preserving, even killing for our existence. Community defense in Pueblo communities is a birthright. It is our birthright in order for us to organize on our original territories to defend our lands, our people, our water, and our non-human relatives. And so moving forward with providing an example and formation of what Pueblo Indigenous community defense looks like, we are also carrying on that legacy and that responsibility to our Pueblo revolutionaries from the past. So this has been ongoing for over 340 years, you know, at this point. So with that, I will then pass it to Marcus, who will then start to basically dissect the formation of what community defense is, or what we define as Pueblo Indigenous community defense. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Marcus.
For sure, yeah. If you want to go to the next slide, Julia, as well. So to start off, you know, Pueblo Indigenous Community Defense, it means to protect our people and our cultural integrity. And by doing this, this is centered around these 3 points that are on the screen. And so elders being the wisdom and knowledge carriers. As Pueblo people, this includes, you know, the elders being the wisdom carriers. This includes oral tradition. This includes sacred and non-sacred stories that come from our elders. This is, you know, both community and direct traditions that are carried on. And so valuing and listening and carrying out the wisdom that is passed down generation to generation, keeping in mind intergenerational learning, as mentioned in our points of unity. And then point 2, the youth in our future. And so through PAA, we center our youth as through the youth internships and to uplift their voices to be heard on the same scale as an organization and as Pueblo people. And so this example is through the intern, you know, the engagement that the community that they're holding, kind of from the flyers that we had showed earlier. And then point 3, it's centered around the protection of the community, the land, the air, the water, the plants and animals. And so this is kind of, you know, being aware and being educated about what's happening in our lands, what's happening both on the reservation, off the reservation, all of our ancestral lands. And these are kind of the foundations that community defense kind of entails to protect our people and our cultural integrity, our ways, and all 3 of these points here that kind of, you know, are vital to community defense. So yeah, next slide, Julia. And so within community defense, we have these kind of ideologies and these embodiments from community versus individualism. And kind of in light of like COVID-19 right now, this is a very relevant individual way of thinking that we often hear in a lot of Western mind frames is, you know, I'm not going to wear my mask because it infringes on my rights, opposed to the communal way of thinking, you know, I will wear my mask because it will help protect my community. And so what we have here basically is the opposition of Western and imperial philosophies opposed to indigenous thinking, indigenous ways of life. And these ways are embodied through the systems like our, you know, the individualistic ways are rooted in capitalism and imperialism, you know, the US government, very individual, you know, capitalism benefits the individual, opposed to communal ways of thinking where we have our plazas, we have our kivas, you know, we have our gatherings, our feast days at a house. We're always in communities, we're always together, we're always in a circle, you know. And so even these life ways embody what communal ways of thinking is. And this is also vital to mutual aid and community defense. And with this quote here, everything for the people and nothing for me. And that also speaks really heavy into the community defense efforts that we've been, and the mutual aid efforts that we've been really engaging in. And then next slide. And so right here, some of the mutual aid that we've kind of, this top picture here is from Espanola and the mass giveaway. And so mutual aid means to have the means to prepare and be ready for any type of crisis. And so right now it's super relevant for COVID and how it really hit our indigenous communities harder, you know, it hit reservations harder. This is why we have our communities closed down right now, or a lot of our pueblos are shut down to non-residents even. And so community defense shouldn't have to be so reactionary to the political climate. And so having a community defense model, organization, strategy for these types of things will help with the readiness and preparedness for crises like COVID-19, climate change, and US imperialism. And within this, we can't forget about climate change. We can't ignore that, and not having the resources for our people will result in times like where we are now with our communities trying to catch up on preparing our people, you know, by allowing people to be prepared food-wise, with water, with medicine, with all of these different ways that we traditionally gather and originally kind of just like protect our people. And so mutual aid in response to COVID-19, indigenous communities weren't ready for a global pandemic. And so this is why it is important to understand what mutual aid is and how it even connects to the need for traditional food sovereignty, which goes into our next slide. And so food sovereignty is knowing how to grow our own foods. And so right here in this top picture, it's Aaron Loudon from Pueblo Action. And this is an example, we wanted to use him as an example of the traditional ways of producing food, producing ancestral methods. You know, food sovereignty is very much connected to a spiritual and traditional sense of growing, respecting the land and the people. And even as understanding food sovereignty, you know, using the spiritual ways and the cultural ways that we grow, it's even for community-based provision. You know, all the food, lots of the plants, the greenery that we grow is for the people in the area and for as many people as we can spread out to. And so this is a good example of being prepared for these types of things, that we have a right to have food sovereignty within our Pueblo indigenous communities, and we have a right to distribute it as we are taught, as we learn from the generations before us. And so within that, you know, food brings people together, and that contributes to the communal way of thinking and the communal ideologies that we must carry on. And so understanding food sovereignty is community defense. And in order to understand this community defense and food sovereignty, we have to be able to have the lands and the water to actually carry that on, to actually use these methods on. And so being aware of water and land management, which Julia, I'm gonna pass on to you as well to explain deeper.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, okay, first of all, we can't exercise our sovereignty if we don't have our land, you know. I believe wholeheartedly that decolonizing is obtaining land back, indigenous sovereign nations obtaining land back, because we're land-based people. We learn from the land, we grow on the land, we pray, we play on the land. So everything's connected back to the land. And indigenous peoples have the innovation and the creativity to come up with management practices and strategies that meet the needs of the land and the people and the water. We've been, you know, known as like the Indian problem for so long, but we really are like the ecological solutions when it comes to climate change, when it comes to, with all the other climate stressors that fall underneath that umbrella, you know, when it comes to water management, you know, in the Southwest, they like to always talk about this drought that we're in, but, you know, really, if you think about it, we're in a shift in climate. You know, climate is changing. And so, you know, how are we going to, you know, assess like our vulnerability, you know, on our land bases? How are we going to plan, you know, for the future? What's really great about indigenous thought and ideology, just to build off of what Marcus was saying, is that, you know, long term, like what is the long term goals and visions, you know, that we're trying to accomplish, you know, for the next generations to come. We want there to, like, you know, this is a picture of Sandia. Like, I want there to be Sandia for 7 generations ahead, you know. And so how, like, let's think about, you know, how we're going to protect our land and waters through the means of community defense. And so really exercising like our autonomy and our sovereignty to manage our land and water, as well as the cultural resources that are, you know, within the land base. We have a right to protect our cultural resources because, you know, indigenous communities don't necessarily have this this ideology of individualism or to like exploit resources. It's to meet the needs of community. So when we grow food, it's for community. It's not to profit off of or anything like that. You know, corn has had an ancestral legacy throughout, you know, Turtle Island. And what we have seen with capitalism is it's commodified corn, and it's attempted to strip away its sacredness, you know. And so what we have to offer as an indigenous people is like land and water management practices. So even in our points of unity, we talk about obtaining land and water back. Land back has been a movement that has basically, you know, talked about like returning or giving stewardship back to the original peoples of this land. But, you know, we sometimes leave water out of the conversation. Water, you cannot sustain anything on top of the land if you don't have the water. And, you know, we've been learning about these struggles throughout the global indigenous struggle in the movement to obtaining land back. For example, the Guarani Kiowa, we had just recently learned when we were sharing, you know, information with each other that the indigenous people have been obtaining land back. You know, they've been able to prove their territories under their, I think it was 1982 Constitution. They've been able to obtain their territories back but there isn't any water. They don't have access to drinking water. So they can't even begin to think about growing food for their communities because they don't have water. So, you know, we've been, we really want to emphasize on water back and shedding light to all of the unsettled water claims that Indigenous people have right to in the Southwest, in New Mexico. You know, we hear it all the time, you know, oh, like, you know, these rural Indigenous communities aren't getting water. And it's like, well, this is, you know, this is part of it. This is part of obtaining land back, is to also obtain water back too. And so we include this in our community defense model, and couldn't, you know, want to stress on it a little bit more as we develop like what this looks like in the future. Okay, so with that too, we emphasize on the importance of bottom-up organizing. This is a term fairly recognizable throughout movement spaces, but what it means to us is just like really meeting community needs, like knowing the community in order to uplift their voices. When it comes to Indigenous communities, we have the right, just like the Perepeche mountain community, to reclaim traditional governance systems and societal structures, because these systems were actually created for us, unlike the system that we're in right now that wasn't created for us. And now we're having to navigate through that system and then expose the system for its oppression, for its racism, and for its violence on Indigenous people, on African Black people, on Chicanx people, on any person of color. The settler state violence is a system, system in its whole to erase, you know, original peoples of this land base. So by reverting back to bottom-up organizing strategies, we are the voice as community, as a collective, you know, and bottom-up organizing is also building trust in the community. So being involved in your community is super important. You know, the whole reason for community defense is uplifting the voice of the community. Everything for the people and nothing for me. It's about everyone else, you know, and not the individual. And that's the reason why community defense is so important in revolution and Indigenous liberation. And so with that too, we have the right to organize our own military and our own forms of self-defense. We organize under principles of direct action. And what this means for us too is also learning our land base, walking the res, running the res, learning from the land. It is so important for us to organize on our land bases because it teaches you so much. And when you're starting to think about how you're going to organize yourselves in a militant style or whatever, if that's self-defense, connecting it to our land base is probably the most important thing that we can do. We've seen examples of Indigenous people organizing themselves through self-defense, like the Mohawk warrior societies that we've seen throughout Turtle Island. This is another model of Indigenous autonomous spaces, teaching community defense and self-defense on traditional core values again. So protecting land, protecting water, protecting the people, and protecting like our culture and traditions. And so, you know, okay, so with that, we just wanted to recap everything in our formation of what like Pueblo Indigenous Community Defense is. So that's protecting our people and our cultural integrity. That's practicing and living and breathing communal ways of life. That is organizing and being prepared and ready for mutual aid. That is teaching about traditional food and farming practices to exercise food sovereignty, to conduct and create water and land management strategies that are meeting the needs of the community, the land, the water, and our non-human relatives. Bottom up organizing, so uplifting community voices, speaking on behalf of the community, learning the community, being in the community, building trust in the community is one thing I forgot to mention. And then also our right, our birthright to defend our land our land bases, our people, our traditions, our ways of life through an organized militant and self-defense formation. And so with that, we demand the liberation of sacred land, water, people, and ways of life. We demand our right to self-determination and sovereignty, and we demand justice through community or defense organizing. And so I'll go ahead and pass it to Marcus to then maybe start some, depending on how much time we have, some space for reflection. And so, yeah, go ahead, Marcus.
For sure, yeah. So these are some reflection questions and a little bit of takeaway as well to sit with. And our first question is, what can community defense look like in your community? So like, what is needed? What does the infrastructure look like? The resources, what are the demands? And also along with that too is, what does the landscape geography look like in your area? Is it urban or rural, like living on or off the reservation? Is there access to water? You know, are there any rivers that are close by the community? Food sovereignty, are we living close to a food desert? Or is there access to water or to food, such as like healthy foods, you know, foods of our ancestral lineages? And what steps can you take to address the needs in your community? And so with that as well, it's the small steps to work your way up through community organizing. And so with these three questions, I kind of want to, we have a little bit of time. I want to open up possibly if anybody had feedback or would like to maybe discuss a little bit on community defense. Julia, did you want to add anything to this as well?
Sorry. Yeah, I think we have some time, I think, to open this up for discussion. I am pretty bad with Zoom, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Or if you need the reflection question, if folks need the reflection questions posted up, I'm actually seeing some things in the chat. And they're mostly from Sheldon, so that's good. But if we want to open up the space for some dialogue, we kind of ran through that fairly quickly, but if there's any questions or anything like that, we are open to some discussion, or if we want to do breakout rooms to have some more kind of internal discussions and then bring it back. What do you guys think we should do?
Cool. So we have a question in the chat from Nico. Julia, maybe you could answer this one a little better. It says, where are there any writings over the Zapatistas or Purepecha Mountain community, or any others that you would like to recommend?
Yeah, they have their own like book and guidelines, the Zapatistas, right, Sheldon? Yeah. And so, and that's like, the Zapatista movement has really been a foundation for a lot of community defense models. So even like the Purepecha pulled a lot of like what the Zapatistas were doing, you know, in the mountains, you know, for 10 years, much like the organization of the Pueblo Revolt. So, you know, I think important thing to stress is that these things take time, you know, and we're not just trying to be so reactionary to what the political climate is at the moment. Let's think long term, you know, how can we like build foundation, trust, and actually like participation, you know, by any means necessary. So I would start with the Zapatistas. A lot of the information that I obtained from like the Purepecha is like YouTube or, you know, other types of media outlets that maybe aren't so connected to like mainstream propaganda, because a lot of the things get diluted. I mean, we've had the opportunity to even travel to Cuba and learn about the Cuban Revolution, and everything they say here in the belly of the beast is not the truth at all of what's going on in Cuba. Cuba is another important example of community defense, encompassing mutual aid, bottom-up organizing, food sovereignty, water and land management. Everything that we had basically covered has been like a basis for Cuban's successful economy, because they live and breathe the revolution every single day. And we want to embody that example as well as living the Pueblo Revolt every single day. And it never ended and it never will end. So yeah, and a good point was here is that to highlight the matriarchal approaches of direct action, a lot of indigenous formations and societal structures are matriarchal as well. You know, a lot of our organizing basis is to protect our Earth Mother, is to protect our matriarch, you know, and, you know, just even in some of the readings that I've done personally in women's roles in revolution is, you know, we have an important role in terms of education, you know. That was one thing that I reread fairly recently in guerrilla warfare, Che's book. You know, he was saying that there is a certain demeanor that the matriarch or like the, you know, the feminine energy has to offer when it comes to educating revolutionary literature, you know, so that's very important. And so I would look to a lot of examples from other revolutions that have been successful, you know, and we have a really important one here, that being the Pueblo Revolt, because we did win and there was a period of peace after. Okay, and then we have some, can we hear some of the Mapuche Pueblo connections? The Mapuche are in Chile, correct? I believe they are in Chile.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think the one thing I know about them is that they shot a plane down that they thought the Pope was in, so that was pretty rad. But that would be another example of like community organizing. They are against the colonial power, you know, they are very much organized on their own traditional core values. I think that's basically like what we're trying to get at, is that you can organize based on traditional core values. It's a tool for unification. I think the biggest kind of downfall in any movement in the US is a fragmented narrative. And there's so many narratives going on, like that's fueled by the nonprofit industrial complex, that's fueled by the neoliberals, that's fueled by, you know, revolutionaries, and all of these narratives are very similar yet different. It's causing confusion on the battlefield. So that's something that I think is an advantage in Indigenous organizing and Indigenous community defense, is that a lot of our traditional core values are very similar across the global Indigenous struggle. And so let's highlight on those and organize on those principles. But I will definitely do my part in self-educating myself on the Mapuche, and other than them just shooting a plane out from the sky. Okay. Yeah, there's been a lot going on in southern Chile lately. Hunger strikes, occupying buildings, yes. And of course, you know, every prayer that we put down isn't just for us, but it's for all of our relatives across, you know, across the diaspora, in the struggle. You know, we're always thinking about them too. Oh yeah, actually Reyes, yeah, she said that she had come across some pictures of some Mapuche women in their traditional clothing, and lo and behold, it looks like pretty similar to like how Pueblo people, how we dress. up here. So, and even just like the Kiowa, the Guarani Kiowa, there's like, you know, there's Kiowas up here too. So, you know, we're all connected, and that's what's really great about education, is that we're also able to learn, you know, about our lineages to the global south and then to up north too. So it's always really fun.
For sure. Alicia, did you have anything else further to share about the people that are down in Chile? Any further info?
No, I was just trying to get Reyes to share those pictures. They're my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for real though, they're like throwing down, and I always see that connection. I think it just continues to build that connection between the North and South, bridging the eagle and the condor together, and that's what we like to see. We want to see our communities continuing to have those solidarities, those connections, those community buildings across borders.
Especially because we're seeing a lot of the similar disparities happening to our indigenous relatives south of the border, right? Especially with COVID-19, like we know that the connections of the global south and the way that colonization has impacted indigenous folks of the global south, it has been very connected to resource extraction and to a direct attack on people and land.
Yeah, so it exposes that the treatment of original and indigenous people is the same everywhere. You know, like it's the same fight everywhere when it comes to like indigenous resistance. It's protecting forests, it's protecting water, it's protecting people and culture, it's protecting, you know, everything. It's protecting like what we see as living entities and not resources, you know. That's been something that we've learned, you know, just being in Pueblo Action Alliance and having the privilege and opportunity to meeting people all over Turtle Island and beyond, that the fight is very much the same. And so creating spaces like this to share information is extremely important, you know, to building a strong power base and to unifying the narrative, you know. I really believe in that, and that's something that we learned from every revolution, is that the cause was this, like, for everybody, you know, everything for everybody and nothing for me. And you know, it's good to organize like on those ideologies. I had put the kind of reflection takeaways in the chat. It messed up the whole kind of formation of it, but you know, I think it's something to really consider, you know, looking into wherever you organize or wherever you know, whatever land you occupy. It's important to make those assessments, you know. Not everything happens in the urban city, you know, and so how are we going to also include like a rural organizing narrative, you know. And I think community defense is a really important formation to consider when you're organizing, especially for long-term vision and long-term goals. So does anybody have anything else to say, or what? I'm just kidding. I feel like I'm the only one talking, but again, like, you know, we're very open to feedback. This is something that we've just been recently developing, and, you know, just been discovering and veiling its importance more and more each day. Like I said, you know, we had shifted a lot of our initiatives to encompass mutual aid efforts, and it's really challenged us to think about what community defense means to us and our communities. And then again, how can we create this discovery and research in an accessible educational type of form so that we can share with other peoples too. So, you know, again, we would love feedback on how to strengthen or what worked in our presentation, what maybe didn't work. You know, I'm really open to that. We can put our contact info in the chat. Let me see, Nico. I'm a new YouTuber, so I just started like figuring out that you can like subscribe to stuff. But what I can do maybe is we can put together a list of resources that we obtained during like our study sessions when we were building our community defense, and we can send that to Marielle, and they can disperse that to whoever attended this this workshop, and that could be one of our deliverables from this presentation, if that's cool.
Yeah, we can totally compile all of the resources from all of the incredible workshops from this weekend and just go ahead and send them to y'all alongside with the recordings, because we know it's not realistic for people to be just completely in Zoom mode for a full weekend.
Yeah.
It really was just our practical way of being like, here's a weekend full of workshops, attend the ones that you can, and the ones that you cannot, we'll still record them and make them accessible to you. So we're just grateful to have y'all, honestly, and any resources, yes, we'll go ahead and pass them along for sure.
Okay, great. No, and we're so humbled and honored to be in this space. We love Uplift. I think, gosh, I've been participating in Uplift for I think 3 or 4 years now. So, you know, I love the conference. I'm sad that it's not like in the mountains somewhere. That was something I always look forward to. But, you know, thank you for all of that attended and listened to us. And a lot of our content at the beginning of our presentation is on our website. So if you go to puebloactionalliance.org, you can look through our whole entire website, get a better insight of what we've been up to and what we're planning on doing. We've been helping our youth put out some really dope content. So like Marcus had mentioned at the beginning, Jay Little Bear had visioned this whole interview with her grandparents on their reaction of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's really powerful. So Sheldon threw our website link in the chat. Check out our efforts on Chaco. Those are ongoing. There is still a huge push to expand more fracking development in the region, and we're working, you know, to expose, you know, whoever is involved with, you know, land exploitation, non-consensual land exploitation. So we have a lot of content coming out about that. We just recently launched an infographic that goes over all of the health impacts, the adverse health impacts to the body when exposed to long-term fracking operations. So, you know, we're doing a lot of different stuff. We're constantly little busy Pueblo bees over here. And, you know, again, we're always open for critique and for collaboration. And I just appreciate, again, like, you know, inviting us to our space and everything. Oh, yes, and our mutual aid efforts are continuous. Reyes has been leading a lot of that effort. So, yeah, follow us on IG, Facebook, Twitter. We just love our followers.
can I just say, watching y'all grow over the years has been such an honor and a blessing. I was literally about to ask, like, if I have a question, it would be like, how do you do it all? And what is actually the all? Because I feel like anytime I tune in, like, oh my goodness, the latest talks with grandma and grandpa led by the youth, I was just looking through and I was just like, I don't even know how many people are in Pueblo Action Alliance, because it feels like 20, because there's so much coming out. There's so much content. The media is brilliant. I think Alicia said it, like, your graphics are on point. Oh my goodness. I just want to say, like, over the years watching y'all grow, it has been such an honor, and y'all are completely killing the game. Like, and it's just such an intentional to, like, anti-colonial, like anti-capitalist, like very, very, like, just rebellious side. It just, ooh, movement boots, all of you. Thank you so much. Wow.
Oh, gracias por todo and Herkimship. Like, we're just so honored. Like, me and Reyes, we look back at our first days, you know, freaking making fry bread to raise money, you know, and we've grown so much, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without, you know, like the support of our community and our relatives and, you know, everybody. Like, we can't believe it sometimes either, you know. We're just really blessed. We're blessed to be a part of this, and you know, it's all for the revolution, you know, it's all for liberation, and Indigenous liberation is for everybody, you know, it's for everybody. And, you know, we're honored to stand next to y'all to, like, dismantle and eradicate fucking colonialism. So yeah, we're fucking here for it. But I also want to give some space to my other the other PAA members here, if you all want to close things up or whatever. So again, thank you.
For sure. Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for joining in, for listening to our community defense workshop. It's been awesome growing with PAA so far, and so I look forward to more moments like these, also growing with the community. So yeah, I just want to say doa, say hopa. Thank you for listening in.
I just want to say thank you to Marcus and Julia for presenting, and Sheldon and helping and organizing that. Thank you, Uplift, for those kind words. You know, like, just want to quickly say, you know, we've always, like, said that we, like, treat it like our baby, right? But that's just, like, a part of, like, the community care, because we know that it's not just for us, you know. We know that we do it for our people, and when you have that mindset and that intention and that compassion, that's why we're able to put out what we have been putting out, you know, and have been growing over the years. So I guess I just want to circle back to, like, the whole presentation, right? Utilize the way that we've been able to organize, you know, as a template, you know, that, oh, I'm hoping that the hard work that they each put in today, you guys are able to take away something from that and really apply it to your community, you know, reflect on it. You know, that's why we put those takeaways and reflection points at all of our workshops, because we don't want to just drop information. We want to also help other people build and see how they can apply it to their communities. So thank you. Good job to you guys too as organizers in creating this space too. I know it's not the easiest task right now. So good job to all of you guys at Uplift and anyone else who's helping you guys.
I just wanted to make sure. Cool, yeah. Dan, thank you for everybody tuning in. First of all, thank you to Julia and Marcus for the workshop, for the presentation. It was good. There was a couple moments there I was thinking, you know, I'm gonna help out. I could do this or maybe say this. And then for a couple moments there, I'm just sitting there like I'm just participating in the workshop and hearing y'all talk. And I'm like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to do this. I can drop this link in the chat, you know? It's just funny. But no, really, like, big ups. Thank you to Uplift for this opportunity. Even thank you to PAA as well. Just growing with PAA, like Marcus was saying, you know, even thinking about things like this and like having that consciously be in my mind, like being able to think about it and then really envision a way of like how do we bring these together? How do we do that and actually create these spaces or create these workshops, and then engage in like popular education, engage in political analysis, all of these things that we all have talked about in our communities, you know, in different places, and then bringing it to the forefront again, like we were saying, to be able to unify each other, you know, unify that narrative across Turtle Island with, you know, solidarity locally, globally, internationally, all of those things. Yeah, I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the workshop, for Uplift, for the crew, for everybody here, everybody involved. And yeah, again, follow us on social media, check out our website. We have an email as well, Pueblo Action Alliance @gmail. And YouTube too. We just started the YouTube channel too, and that's where you can find the talks with grandma and grandpa as well. It's also on the youth intern page too. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. When you first gave me the thumbs up, I was like, did he literally just unmute himself just to give me a thumbs up? Okay. But yeah, I think another thing I just wanted to say, I wanted to name was that, you know, some of us, we've known each other for a few years. Some of us, you know, we've met over the years doing different direct actions as different direct action organizers. And I think that's something that I find really beautiful about, you know, PAA, is that it's literally you're witnessing people grow also into like different roles as we have more youth coming into the movement, more youth hitting the streets. You know, we're definitely trying to like remind ourselves, right, that the movement isn't something, it isn't a singular moment. It goes beyond the protest, it goes beyond beyond the walkout, it goes beyond the rally. It really is about that long-term sustainable work, and that's really what it is, building resistance. So I really do appreciate everything that y'all have brought into this conversation. And yeah, wanted to again say thank you. I know that your workshop is scheduled to end in a little bit later, but if everyone feels comfortable and good, and we feel like we've had a good closeout, we could also close out early if there are no more questions from the participants. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, thank you all so much for letting us glimpse a little bit into the future, into these indigenous futurisms, and wild, beautiful, you know, futures with land back.
Thank you again, Herkemshem, Shiimba. Thank you.
All right, well then I guess we're gonna go ahead and transition into our closeout. Everyone, please remember we're gonna have an Instagram live in just a few minutes here at 6 o'clock or at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Sheldon's gonna be there, so you know, not trying to put you in the spotlight, but also, you know, you said you got the mic is here. Yeah, everybody tune in. Make sure to keep me company because I'll be there. And also, yeah, again, just thank you all so much. If I don't see you there, maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.
Thank y'all.
Ooh, thanks, y'all. Nice chat to Oteko. We'll catch you guys later.